You ever have that time where you get prepped to go to an event? You make sure your list is absolutely as good as it can be. You do all the testing. You make sure you're playing as good as you can. And then you get absolutely steamrolled. That's your boy. But it doesn't matter how you do at the event. What does matter is what you can learn from it, how you bounce back, and how you come back stronger next time. I was playing Altergeist Dogmatika, and I went 1-4 drop in a 6-round event. It was not pretty. However, I learned some things that were good in my list, some things that weren't good, and overall just came out learning more than I did before I went in. So, with that in mind, I'd like to present to you guys my Altergeist Dogmatika deck profile for October 2021. This one is very nice. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your boy Pay8. I am feeling great, and I'm coming at you with another spicy deck profile. This is one, like I said, that I've been hyped for a really long time. This is Altergeist Dogmatika. Super happy that Nadirs are finally somewhat affordable now because of the Megatins. Same with Ecclesia, same with Titaniclad. I've been wanting to play this deck since it came out, but I could never justify spending that much money on a deck that might get hit on the list. I don't know if they're going to hit the Dogmatika stuff specifically, but the invoked Dogmatika Shaddoll amalgamation might have a target on its back, so do keep that in mind if you decide to build this deck. However, I think this version of it is fairly future-proof just because of the way the list ends up shaking out to be, so that's pretty cool. A quick thing I want to say before I get into the list itself, huge shout out to Javier and Joe for helping me refine this list and making some pretty big decisions. This is not the exact same list that I played at TCGCon, but it is a refined version of it after learning from mistakes. So this deck is built to be sort of an anti-meta type deck. It is meant to take down a lot of meta, which meant playing against hardline combo or hardline control that is not meta, such as like Dark Warrior, for example. I was not prepared for that. That could have been a factor in my miserable record, but regardless, the list itself actually felt pretty good, so I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get right into it, starting with the main deck. For the Altergeists, this has never changed. 3 copies of Marionetter, 3 copies of Meliseek, 3 copies of Multifaker. Been at 3 for a little while, and it still feels good. I was honestly never a fan of it going to 1 in the first place, but 3 is always happy to see again. 2 copies of Silquidus, and then the 1 copy of Kinkiri. I've seen a couple Altergeist Dogma lists play like 1 Silk or cut the Kinkiri. I mean, it could be fine, but I like the Kinkiri because you just don't want to get OTK'd out of nowhere because that can be a weakness for this deck. And then the Silquidus, if you play the 1 and you draw, it's so bad, and I honestly think playing the 2 is fine, especially since like even hands of like Silk Protocol is still like fine. It's not the worst thing. You can stall out a little bit until you see more of your engine. But I just think these numbers have been standard for literal years, so I think it's fine. And then for the Dogmatika engine, it's real simple. 2 copies of Ecclesia and then the 1 copy of Fleur de Lis. I'm actually a fan of Fleur just because Altergeist itself does not actually have a convincing out for untargetable indestructibles like Dragoon. Or like an IP Dave or Max or something of that nature. But Fleur does take care of it, and it also gives you a way to hit for damage if you're under punishment, because I was always a fan of punishment specifically in Geist because the pop 2 is just too good to pass up. And then I play the multiple copies of Ecclesia because I just like having a second one in deck to be able to search with the Nadir if I open the like if I was playing the 1 Ecclesia and I opened Nadir and the Ecclesia, which I know is a little bit of a rare circumstance, I like sending certain things with less than 2,500 attack in certain instances just based on what the rest of my hand is, and I just want to open Ecclesia a little bit more because she does say search punishment. So this ratio was really good. I was originally playing 3 originally, but I got talked into playing 2, and 2 was completely fine, especially with Nadir. If Nadir were to get hit, you could just play a 3rd Ecclesia, and I don't think it would make that big of a difference. But yeah, and then the only monster hunter I'm playing is just 3 copies of Ash Blossom. This I was actually not playing at TCGCon. I was playing Torrential instead, and honestly Torrential just kind of felt meh at best. Because I think the thing with this deck is not like other trap decks, because you actually have effects you want to resolve on your first turn in order to be able to get into the game, while other decks like Eldritch Stun or Paleo Marincess was a deck I've seen. I know that's kind of off the wall, but just hardline trap decks, they're fine to just set 5, but this deck can't really do that as well. So I think slowing your opponent down, even if just a little bit, is huge. So I think you have to play some hand traps in Geist. You wouldn't go like 9 hand traps, 12 hand traps, but I think 6 is fine. So Ash has been decent in the testing I've done, like at locals against meta decks there, because our locals is actually pretty good for it. I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, Ash has been fine. Considering main decking Lancia as well, that's another option, because it does have applications against a lot of meta decks and against a lot of rogue that are just kind of running around. But I digress. That is it for the monsters. Going to the spells, 3 copies of 2 of the strongest spell cards in the game, 3 copies of Nadir, and 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Extrav is still pretty self-explanatory because Geist can take advantage of it almost perfectly. I would probably be playing Prosperity in this version instead, because in the side deck there's a lot of like Kaijus and Alphas and just things to break boards. I won't show the side because that's something I'll keep kind of under wraps for now, but Extrav's been fine for me, I guess. I think Prosperity is just better in this version. In Pure Geist, 100% Extravagance because you just like the draw 2. But in a variant like this where you have specific power cards that are extremely good if you see them, I think Prosperity would be a little bit better. Onto Nadir Servant, this card is just insane. I think it's very well designed, being a hard once per turn that's unsearchable. But when you do see it, it is very good. Being able to just send something and search the Ecclesia, and then you get the grave effect of whatever you send, it is a very good card. That is it for spell cards. Geist has never really played a lot of spell cards, so I think that doesn't really come as a surprise. On to the traps. This is actually a little bit of a slim trap lineup, but not really. 3 copies of Personal Spoofing, your pseudo Altergeist Searcher, 2 copies of Protocol, and then 1 copy of Manifestation. I have always been a fan of just 1 Manifestation. I've never liked 2. I don't think you need the second one. Because you can recur it with Silk, you can just get it back, you can activate it and then chain Spoofing or Silk to either shuffle in the deck to search or bounce it back to your hand. I really don't see many instances in which case you would need the second one, and it just contributes to some of your mediocre hands anyway. Because the big point that I see some people make for the second Manifestation is like, oh, you can normal Silk, make Almirage, and then Manifestation it back. But that doesn't even feel very good anyway. I'd rather have better cards that do something for the deck. So I think 1 is fine, especially in a hybrid variant like this. And the double Protocol, this has been standard, I believe. Just, this card is insane. It's still been 3 years, and people still try to negate my stuff under Protocol, and it's extraordinarily funny. But Protocol is nice, just the sort of blanket multi-role-like protection, and the ability to have a monster negate and destruction off of just a Marionette or normal summon is huge. And then for the Dogmatika traps, just the double punishment. I was also playing 3 of this, but I got convinced to cut it down to 2 because it is a hard once per turn and it is very searchable. But I do like the 2. I think 1 is too little because I frequently use the second one, because this deck does... Altergeist isn't a control deck that grinds, it's a control deck that controls the tempo. But if you need to grind, I like having the second one, and it does just come up that punishment is really good at slowing down the tempo. Because you want the opponent to play at your speed. You don't want to be trying to play at their speed, because that's when things go wrong. That is it for the archetypal traps. Let's go into some more generic good stuff. Starting with the only other hand trap I played being Triple Infinite Impermanence. I have not played this in Geist before now because I got them around Christmas time last year. And can say, having finally resolved an Imperm Faker for the first time, this card is just nuts. I didn't realize how good being able to use a hand trap that you drew for turn is, but this card is insane. Honestly, if you only have 20 bucks to spend on any of the expensive cards in this deck, being Extravagance, Nadir, and Imperm, I would say go for the Imperms. Honestly, this card is just disgustingly good in this deck. And then the rest of the trap cards, 3 copies of Solemn Strike, and then 2 copies of Solemn Judgment. I wasn't playing Judgment in the main or the side originally, I was playing Secret Village instead, and that came back to bite me in the ass hard. It was not good. Strike was insane. Like, 3 Strike is absolutely incredible. Going first or second, just being able to negate and destroy a monster just by paying 15, it's completely free almost all the time. but I put in Judgment because some decks are packing things for going second turn 1, but also just being able to turn off Evenly Matched and being able to turn off Lightning Storm and just saying no to your opponent activating things that would blow you out otherwise. It's just too good to pass up, I mean, and I quickly realized that when I wasn't playing it. And then the 41st card is the copy of Imperial Order. I'm a very strict man when it comes to sticking to 40 cards, but this card is too good to pass up. Like, if you're playing against Drytron, for example, and they have like 3 spells in hand, you flip this on the first one, they're not winning that, because odds are you have access to like the punishment off of the Ecclesia, or you have access to multi-faker, and like Order Faker is just, I have not lost a game where I've activated Order yet. It's just that good. And I think this format now than ever, we're seeing just by how many decks can blow other decks out with this, just how good this card is. I'm of the opinion that it does not need to be banned, but regardless, that is not for this video. That is it for the main deck. Let's go into the extra deck. So, the extra deck is just a giant toolbox, realistically. You can put whatever you want in here for the most part, but there are some very specific things I would say are mandatory. First of all, the 1 Titaniclad. You use this so that if worst case scenario, you just have punishment, that becomes a way to access one of the deck's engines. Because that is the advantage with Dogmatika Altergeist over Pure. Pure, in terms of power, I would say is a little bit stronger, but this variant I would say is far more consistent in its ability to just access some form of game plan. Because that's the weakness with Pure Altergeist, is sometimes you just get those hands that you just can't describe. They're just those hands. The hands that just aren't good. That's like double protocol manifestation with no monster, or it's like duality into 3 traps that don't do anything. Like, you're able to stall your opponent a little bit, but this deck does not have the stalling power that decks like Eldritch or Paleos, like just hard stun trap decks have. So I'm of the opinion that you need to find an engine, and you need to find an engine early, and this helps you do that. So yeah, the 1 Titaniclad, I really want to put in the second one because of extravagance, but I just don't think I can find the space. Triple copies of Intis, because this card literally is how you get the +1 off of punishment. It makes your Nadir be a removal spell. Playing in the boards is just really good. And then I play a Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This can just be any big monster. I would recommend a monster with 4,500 attack or more, because the thing with 4,500 attack or more, that becomes big enough to pop a Mechaba even with double Alistair protection. So I know they're not going to be burning double Alistairs, but just 45 is the benchmark, because it clears. When you think of big monsters in the format, you think of a boosted Mechaba, you think of a possible Agoides, you think of Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. Earth Machines running around, you can pop the Liba on summon because this is 500 bigger. Just something that's really big that you can send from your extra deck is just, I think you have to play 1. I really want to cut this and put in a copy of Prime Banshee, because I just love what that card does for Altergeist, but I don't think I can get away with it, because you need something really big to send off punishment just for weird scenarios. That is it for the fusion monsters. Going into the links, we have 3 copies of Hextia. This card is broken. I will say it outright. This card is just really good for the deck. Hextia lets you put your opponent on a clock like almost nothing else. Fleur-de-lis comes close, but you can't always make this under punishment or under Nadir, so you're not making it as much in this version. But if you can stick a Hextia, it's just like regular Altergeist. If you can stick a Hextia on the board, you're probably going to be winning. Like, when this card comes out, it's probably game over before they even know it. Just letting it gain attack, becoming spell and trap negate, and then floating in addition to that, this card is just nuts. You play a double link Rebo because extravagance, and you want to be able to link off your Meliseek just to be able to get the search. You play the Artemis. This one's a weird one, but I play this just because of hands that are like Marionette or Faker, and then either Nadir or Ecclesia. Obviously there's specific hands. She's the worst one, but sometimes you just need to put an extra deck monster on board in Marionette hands, so that's fine. The 1 Almirage, this is for Silk specifically, but you can also do it for Meliseek. The important thing is linking off the Meliseek. Meliseek can become all 4 of these. I really want to cut Artemis for a 3rd link Rebo, but I think she comes up just enough to justify keeping her in. But if you don't want to spend the $20 on her, you can get away with not doing it, but there are some very specific hands where she does come up, so just keep that in mind. And then this is a weird one. I play the 1 copy of Farragut. This is just to send off Nadir if my hand's a little clunky. Like, if I have Nadir and Ecclesia in hand, I can Nadir send the Farragut. This is why I said with playing the 2nd Ecclesia, Like, if I open Nadir Ecclesia, I can Nadir, send the Farragut, search the other Ecclesia, draw one, put one of the Ecclesias back, and then I have another card. Or it can help make spoofing live, because sometimes you open spoofing with no Altergeist card. It just digging a little bit helps. Obviously, you can't do this in the same turn that you Extravagance, but it's just there just to be able to modulate your hand a little bit, which can come up. It did come up a good bit, and I would say this card was pretty good for me. And then the last two cards in the extra deck, one Toad. Did you know that Melicy can be added back with this because she's a water? Now you do. Toad's pretty nice. Obviously, you're never summoning this ever, but sending it with a Nadir to get back a Melicy and get a search from deck, pretty nice. And then the one copy of Omega. This is kind of fine, but I think you have to play it just because of putting stuff back. It's really just, this has been standard in anything Dogmatika since day one, and I wouldn't necessarily change it. So that is it for the main and extra. Let's do some test hands. Alright, so as you can see, I have just pile shuffled my deck. I have the piles laying out, so let me just get those put into a singular stack. Oh, that's an Extravagance, let's make sure that is randomly shuffled, because the thing with Altergeist is there's not really a lot of like hard combos to do. It's just more of like consistency testing with your build, and that's what we're going to be doing here. So let's just run a couple hands, see what we can do with them, and just exhibit some of the basic plays that this deck can do. Starting off, we have Punishment, Imperm, Nadir, Ecclesia, and Ash. So this is a very Dogmatika-esque hand, but again, because we already opened Ecclesia and we have access to Fleur-de-Lis if we wanted to get it, this is one of the times where I'm going to be activating Nadir, just sending my copy of, what's her name? Send the copy of Farragut to the grave, and I will search my second Ecclesia. So what we're looking for here is almost exactly Faker, but Marionette would also be fine. I mean, hell, even a spoofing would be fine. Just getting access to the engine, because the Dogmatika engine can stall for a turn or two for you to be able to find the Altergeist engine, because the Geist engine does grind harder. So we get that, and then we activate the Farragut effect to draw one, put one back. Spoofing is good, so we'll put back the second Ecclesia. It does go to bottom instead of shuffled. Just wanted to point that out. So then you just normally Ecclesia, activate the effect. Because we already have Punishment, we're just going to get our copy of Fleur-de-Lis, and we're just going to be pretty happy with that. So yeah, you would just set the 3. You would want spoofing just so if you top deck any Altergeist card at all, like you'd be able to make it live. So during the opponent's turn, we would Punishment, sending Entis, and then Entis pop, and then realistically past that, Imperm Ash is probably good enough. What do we draw? Oh, sick, Protocol, we can go full combo. So again, that's why just taking the spoofing is huge there. We can see that Farragut just kind of opened up our entire hand for the next turn, because if we saw any Altergeist card, it was going to become Faker, or more importantly, become Marionette. Because there's no real point to going for Faker immediately, because we would be out of trap cards, but just getting to your linear engine is crucial. And being able to modulate what's in your hand is a huge part of that. That was a decent hand turn 1. Obviously, opening Nadir is pretty good. So let's look at hand number 2. Starting off, we have Ash Blossom, Altergeist Silk, Altergeist Kinkiri, Solemn Strike, and Dogmatika Punishment. Not the greatest of hands either, but it's still fine because we can normal the Silk, just set 2 and pass. I mean, these two will stall probably. They're going to try to attack, and then we can just Kinkiri Protect, and then when this is on board, we get a bounce. So these two would be chilling here. What do we draw for turn? Oh, sick, Melicy. Again, there are some hands, just like Pure Geist, that aren't great, but the Dogmatika engine, if we wanted to send, like Titanic Glide, for example, we would get access to Ecclesia, and then Ecclesia for another Punishment, just to be able to, like, try and slow down your opponent until you find Faker or Marionette or Melicy, just any of the 3 really good monsters in the deck. Alright, let's do 3 more hands. That would become an even total of 5, so I have nothing against that. Hand number 3, we have Marionette, that's a good start. Silkidus, less good. Solemn Strike, Marionette, and Spoofing. So this is just pretty much classic Altergeist at this point. You just normal summon the Marionette, set a Protocol from deck, set 2 more, and then just pass to your opponent. Where is it? There it is. So that's just, yeah, pretty straightforward. I don't need to explain that. So these 2 would be set. You would Silk shuffle away this, not Silk, you would Spoofing shuffle away the Silk because you never want to open that card ever. Add your copy of Multi-Faker, and then just have Protocol with Faker, that's 2 disruptions, and then Strike becomes a negate and destroy as well. Pretty good. 2 more hands left. Let's see what we can do with them. Give it a good shuffle. We have yet to see any of the really good hands where we open like Nadir Meliseek is like the best 2-card combo in the deck, which is, I will say, it's pretty good. So let's see what we got here. Extravagance, also first time opening that. Punishment, Marionetter, Ash Blossom, Multi-Faker. Now this is a good hand. So we lead with the Extravagance, obviously, because it has to happen at the start of main phase. You get to banish 6 random from your extra deck, because you're never going for 3. What do we banish? Yeah, double Hextia, double Entis, but still doesn't matter. And then draw 2. Oh, sick. Nadir Extrav, nice. So in this case, specifically, we can see we have Nadir, Marionetter, Faker. So we just normal the Marionetter, set the Protocol from the deck. Then, because we do play the Artemis and we didn't banish it, we can just link off of the Artemis, activate the Nadir. In this case specifically, we don't really have anything crazy good value-wise to send that would like get us anywhere else. You can't send the Farigit because we did go under the Extravagance, so that would be useless. So we're just going to send Titaniclad to search for our copy of Ecclesia, because that also would get you a Dogmatika monster from deck during the end phase. Because we already have Punishment, we're going to Ecclesia Summon and then Ecclesia Search. I'm completely fine grinding and then getting a second Punishment next turn, so I'm just going to search Fleur here if for some reason Faker does get stopped. Which I don't think it should be because, you know, Protocol, but sometimes it happens. So you just set the Punishment, and then in end step, you're going to activate Titaniclad effect, adding the second Ecclesia from deck to hand. And at that point, like, we just went plus super hard. Like, we have 5 cards in hand for the next turn, 2 sets, one of which being Protocol. And Protocol Faker, like I said, is one of the best things you can establish in this deck. It's just so hard for your opponent to play through it turn over turn because it recurs itself too. It's just really good. So that was a very good hand. We've seen some average hands, and that was a pretty good one. The deck rarely produces bad hands, as we're seeing. Like, probably the worst one was, I think, Silk with double Marionetter. It was like, I mean, not Silk with double, it was a Silk with, I think it was just Punishment Strike, so it was like, fine. But, again, no deck is perfectly consistent. So, final hand. What do we got? Let's find out. Oh boy, Imperial Order, that's a good start. Punishment, Faker, Strike, Imperm. Yeah, Imperm Faker, alert, this hand's good going first or second. But yeah, if you're going first, that's what we call a big ol' set 4. Yeah, as you can see, the deck is fairly easy to play. At least, like, just doing the basic plays. What makes a good Altergeist pilot, let's not throw that. But what makes a good pilot from what I've seen is just your ability to navigate through what your opponent can throw at you and knowing where to disrupt them. Because, like, you don't go standby phase, flip order, and then on-res Faker, because then that just loses to so much. Like, if they have the Gamma for the Faker, that's just super bad. So just waiting until your opponent commits a little bit and knowing what to hit. Like, for example, if you're playing against a deck that doesn't really need this normal summon, you don't Silk your opponent's normal summon. Like, if that makes sense. Like, you just have to play the deck smart. And if you play the deck smart, it'll do great for you. But sometimes you just gotta let the monkey in every control player kick in. But that is it. That is my Altergeist Dogmatika deck for October 2021. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. If you want to see more from me and more profiles, please hit the subscribe button. It really does just make my day every time I see that number go up. Also, just wanted to say thank you guys so much for well over 100 subscribers. I know I didn't really say anything about it because honestly, I didn't even notice. I've been really busy with college and stuff. Obviously, that's why I'm not recording super often, but yeah, thank you guys so much for that. It really is a huge milestone that I should have done more for. I'm gonna probably do something for that at some point. But regardless, this is Pay 8. I drew the order, so I am feeling great. Y'all have a good night now. I will see you next time. Peace.